So, hello everybody. I know there's still some more people joining us, so we will let those people keep joining. But I just wanted to come on and introduce myself and thank you for attending this session tonight. My name is Sarah Ponick, and I am an Education USA advisor here at the Fulbright Commission. And as you might be able to tell from my accent, I am not originally from the UK. I am from Chicago originally, and I completed both my undergraduate degree and my master's in the Chicagoland area. But I've been living in London for the past 7 years and working at Fulbright for almost 5 years now. And I'm really delighted to be here tonight presenting this session to you. And I'd like to hand over to my colleague, Holly, who will introduce herself.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everyone. My name is Holly Haig, and alongside Sarah, I am an Education USA advisor here at the US-UK Fulbright Commission. As you can tell from my accent, I am originally from here in the UK, from up in Liverpool, and I did my undergraduate degree in the US, hence why my accent is now a bit of a jumble of several different things. So can definitely vouch for that amazing experience, and I've also been in the shoes that all of you are wearing in terms of getting ready to go out and study in the USA. You'll see me again later on this evening if you choose to join our optional session at the end, which Sarah will talk about as we go through. But back to you now, Sarah.
Thanks so much, Holly. And pardon me, got a bit of a congestion, so please excuse that. Holly will also be providing some useful information in the chat this evening. So keep an eye out there for any useful resources that you might wish to see. So just to let you know, this session is being recorded. And so after the session this evening, we will be sending it out to everybody who's registered, and we'll also post it on our YouTube channel. So if there's anything that you miss and you want to catch up on it later, then you will be able to do so. And this presentation is going to focus on how to make the most of your experience in the US and some top tips to set yourself up for success. So I'll give a brief presentation about that. And then I'm going to hand over to our student panel. We've got 3 student speakers here this evening who are from the UK and studying at universities in the US, and they're going to share a little bit about their experiences with you. And then we will open up to questions from all of you. And so you will have the chance to ask questions to these students about their experiences and learn more from them. I will ask that you hold those questions until we get to that part of the presentation. And then when we get to that part, you'll be able to type those questions in the Q&A box and we will get those answered for you. We expect this first session to kind of last for the next hour until about 5:30. And then after that, we'll have an optional session from 5:30 to 7. And at that point, we'll be inviting anybody who wishes to come up on screen and continue the conversation a little bit further. So you'll have the chance to introduce yourself and where you're going in the US and what you're excited about in going to the US. And then you'll also be able to ask more questions to our student panelists. So that will be an optional unrecorded session at about 5:30 after this presentation. So the other thing that I just wanted to quickly mention is that this particular webinar is for students who are already enrolled at US institutions for this upcoming academic year. So that means you know where you're headed this upcoming year in the US, you've enrolled at that institution. If you are tuning in and that is not you, you are somebody who is interested in US study, but you haven't actually made an application or enrolled at a US university, you might find that another one of our upcoming events is a better fit for you. And Holly can post in the chat a link to our events page. And we have next week, we have an event coming up about postgrad study in the US. And in the beginning of September, we have an event about undergraduate study in the US if you're interested in learning more about that. And so you might find that if you're not already enrolled in a US institution, one of those webinars is going to be a better fit for you. All right, so before we move on, we thought that we would just start out by doing a bit of a poll. And so we just wanted to have a sense of who it is that's in our audience with us here this evening. And so in our first poll that Holly is going to share, we want to know, will you be studying in the US as an undergraduate student or as a postgraduate student? And that just means, are you taking classes at the undergraduate level or are you taking classes at the postgrad level? we'll give a second for those answers to come through. All right. So as you can see here, it looks like the vast majority of you will be taking classes at the undergraduate level, though we do have some students at the postgraduate level who are joining us here this evening. And I will reassure you that the content is relevant whether you are studying as an undergraduate student or a postgraduate student. And then we have another poll just to have a sense of how much time you are going to be in the US. So how long will you be studying in the US? Are you taking part in a short-term exchange? So for example, maybe a term or a year, or are you completing your entire degree in the US? So a whole undergraduate degree, a whole postgraduate degree, for instance. And as you can see here, a huge portion of our audience this evening is participating in a short-term exchange, so a term or a year in the US, although we do have some students here in the audience who are completing their entire degree in the US. So thanks so much for taking part in those polls. And we will move along with some of the information. And so I wanted to just tell you a little bit about who we are. So some of you might already be familiar with who we are. You may have actually used our resources in the application process to applying to a US university. But in case this is maybe your first time interacting with us, I just wanted to introduce ourselves. So we are the US-UK Fulbright Commission, and we were established more than 70 years ago in the aftermath of World War II by a man named Senator Fulbright. And Senator Fulbright himself studied in the UK as a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford, and he felt that the best way to avoid a third world war would be to encourage cultural and educational exchange. So we were born from that, and we are a not-for-profit organization that's jointly funded by the US and the UK government to promote peace and cultural understanding through educational exchange. And we do that in a few different ways. So one of the ways we do that is by offering scholarships for postgraduate study and research in the US and the UK. And then we also offer an advisory service to assist students, parents, and advisors. And this advisory service is part of the Education USA network, which is a network of over 400 international student advising centers throughout the world. And our aim at Education USA is to offer free and unbiased advice to help UK students study in the US. And we're actually the only official source of US study in the UK. So if you decide that you love your experience so much in the US and that you would like to pursue further study, perhaps a postgraduate degree, or if you're studying a postgraduate degree, another postgraduate degree, and you need any advice or support through that, then we are here to help you with that. And what I'd like to talk about this evening is how to plan for success at your US institution. So on our website, we have a lot of pre-departure information, and Holly can share a link to this page on our website in the chat. So information about travel, academics, living arrangements, campus life, US culture. And so I'd really recommend that you check that page out and take a read through of all that information. I'll remind you again about it at the end of this presentation. But what I'd like to focus on right now in this brief presentation is some things that you can do now and also when you arrive on campus to really set yourself up for success to enable you to make the most of your experience in the US. And so first things first, just a couple of kind of things that you are probably on your mind and that I want to mention in terms of your arrival in the US. First thing that I kind of want to mention is visas. And so I know a number of you have already secured your visas, you've got that, you're ready to go. And there are a number of you who have applied for your visa and don't have your visa just yet. And so I wanted to reassure you that the consular team at the US Embassy is doing everything they can to get students to the US as soon as possible. And so, please be assured that they are doing that. If you do have any visa questions, we unfortunately are not best placed to kind of answer those questions. The team, the consular team at the embassy is best placed to do that. But we do have some resources that might be useful to you if you have some questions. And so a couple of years ago, we hosted a webinar for students that talks about the whole process of applying for your visa and includes a lot of really great questions, frequently asked questions, and also questions from students. And so that's available, the link that Holly is posting in the chat. And then more recently, we actually held a webinar for advisors that work with students. And that talks about more, has kind of more recent information. We had hoped to hold a visa webinar this summer for students such as yourselves to attend. And unfortunately, the consular team has been so busy trying to get all those visas processed that we weren't able to get a member of their team to join us for that. But we think that these resources will be really useful for you. And if you haven't already, you may also wish to check out kind of the visa FAQ section of the website, the US Embassy website, because that has a lot of information about visas. And they also have a contact page available on their website if you have a question that is not answered in all those FAQs. So we hope that by using one of those resources that you will be able to have any visa questions that you have right now answered. Because unfortunately, we're not kind of best placed to give that advice. It really is the consular team at the US Embassy that is best to give that advice. And so definitely make use of those resources if you have any visa questions. I also quickly wanted to mention a note about COVID, and because I've noticed in the registration, some of you had some questions about COVID. And so what different universities are going to have different policies in place for whether or not they're requiring students to be vaccinated before coming to campus, whether they require students to quarantine before coming to campus, if students are allowed to quarantine on campus when they arrive, or if they have to do that before they step onto campus. And so it's going to be really important for you to check in with your institution in advance and find out what policies they have in place and follow it, whatever guidelines they have put in place for that. And it is going to differ from institution to institution. Okay, so in terms of kind of seeking out resources and making the most of your experience, the first thing that I really want to mention is student orientation. A lot of universities will have an international student orientation before classes start. And if this is something that's available to you, I highly, highly recommend that you take part in it. Now, that being said, I know that some of you are saying, I might not have my visa in time for that. And if that's the case, definitely reach out to the university and see if there's any way that you're able to kind of take part in that remotely. But if you are on campus and able to attend the International Student Orientation, I'd highly recommend you do so. It's a great resource to kind of get to know other students, get familiar with campus and the surrounding area. Sometimes it includes practical things like getting set up with your student ID, with a bank account, maybe with a SIM card for your phone so that your phone will work. Sometimes you have the chance to move into your room early if you're staying in student accommodation. Sometimes universities might even arrange trips to local stores like Target or Walmart, which are really, really big stores in the US, if you haven't heard of them, where you can buy things like bedding and essentials. And so I would highly recommend kind of taking advantage of that if you have that offered to you. Something that you might already be aware of, but if you're not, would like to make you aware of, is that student housing in the US can be quite different than in the UK. You typically have a roommate who you might already be in contact with if you have been assigned a roommate. And it is quite common to have shared bathrooms. And I'm sure that our student panel later can share any of their experiences and answer any questions that you might have about student housing. So the next thing that I want to mention, my next tip, is to kind of do your research. Now, you're already familiar with this. The reason that you're going to the US is because you've done research on how to get there and you've made this happen for yourself. So now take those research skills that you've used to make this happen and use them to kind of make the most of your experience. You should seek out what resources are available on your campus. Most universities will have an international student office, and that's going to be a really great place for you to kind of make sure that you're on their mailing list, make sure that you know where they are, who are people in that office that might be able to help you with things. You're going to find that that's going to be a really good place for you at a lot of universities. Another resource that we recommend seeking out early on is any kind of mental health resources. It's really common in the US for students to make use of kind of counseling services, and a lot of universities might even include this, some counseling sessions as part of their tuition. And so that's something that you might want to consider, especially if you're going to be far away from home for the first time, and just kind of getting yourself kind of set up so that you have those resources available to you. Remember that universities want to support their students. So there are a lot of different services that exist. It's just a matter of kind of seeking out what they are, realizing what they are, so that you can use them if and when you need them. Another really great resource for you might be other students themselves. Are there other UK students that are at your university, especially if you are going for an exchange? Are there other students that are going from your university? Or do you know of students who's previously studied from the UK at that university? Can they share any tips or experiences with you? Maybe if there aren't UK students at the university, are there other international students that you can connect up with? Because you're going to have this shared experience of coming into the US from another country, and you will find that they can be a really great support system to kind of support you while you're there. Get involved. So as you might be aware, US universities are really vibrant places for extracurricular life, and students are really encouraged to get involved outside of the classroom. And so most universities are going to have some type of fair at the beginning of the term where you can go around and sign yourself up for mailing lists that you will never get off of once you're signed up for. And so find clubs and organizations that you're interested in, sign up for some, go along to some of the meetings at the beginning and find out what you're interested in and take part in it. It's a really good way to kind of make friends, to meet other people, and to get involved in the US campus life. So this is something that I would highly recommend. And I'm sure that our student speakers that are going to speak in a little bit can talk about how they've gotten involved at their campus and the kind of friends and community that they found in doing that. All right, be open-minded. You have chosen to go to the US because you want this new experience. The US is also somewhere that offers a lot of flexibility, and that might be one of the reasons that you've chosen to go there. You might have the chance to take a class on a topic that you never expected to get to take as part of your degree. So be open-minded to that, be welcoming of that. Another thing that you should be aware of is that classes might seem very different in the US than in the UK. Whereas in the UK, it's quite common to kind of have large pieces of coursework or a big exam at the end of a term. In the US, it's much more common to kind of have regular testing throughout, regular homework throughout. So that's going to be a bit of an adjustment, and you might just kind of want to prepare yourselves for that and be aware of that. Also in the US, class participation is often quite normal, quite expected. It can even be included as part of your grade. And so if that's something that you maybe haven't had to do much before, you might want to kind of set yourself a little challenge of speaking up once in each class and getting yourself accustomed to that, because it is a big part of the classroom experience in the US. Reach out for supports. So as I've already mentioned, you may wish to establish connections with the International Student Office. They're a really great resource for you. If you're living in student housing, you're likely going to have an RA, a resident advisor, who is a student, like an upperclassman, somebody who's been there at university already, who can be there to support you with anything housing related, but also just generally. In terms of academics, it's likely that your university is going to have something like a writing center to support you with academic writing. Or if you're taking a foreign language, they might be a language learning center. I know when I was at university, I was able to get free tutoring because I was taking language classes from our language learning center. Also, in the US, it's quite common for professors to have office hours where they have a set time each week where they're in their office available for you to come and talk to them. Make use of that. Make up a reason to just go. Maybe you have a genuine question. If not, just like make up a reason to go and have a chat, get to know the professor. It is quite common in the US, and they are quite happy to get to know you and to speak with you. They enjoy speaking to their students and getting to know their students. And that can be a really great resource and a great avenue of support for you in the US. And as I've already mentioned, don't hesitate to seek out any counseling services that are available on campus. And what I would say is don't be afraid to keep asking for help until you get what you were looking for. Sometimes you might, try and reach out somewhere for help and they might not quite give you the answer that you're looking for. And so you might have to kind of seek out help elsewhere. There are so many, as I said, there's so many services available that don't hesitate to kind of make use of them. So kind of going along with that, health and well-being. So I would really recommend seeking out resources that are available as soon as you arrive, before you need them, so that if you get to a point where physically or mentally you need some additional support, you actually already know where you need to go for that. Something to consider, there might be a health center on campus for any kind of ailments that you might need to go there for. Another thing to think about is health insurance. It's likely that this is something that you may have already thought about, but if not, health insurance is usually purchased either through the university itself or separately, and you can speak to the International Students Office to kind of get more information about that. I highly, highly recommend reading through your policy in advance. I know it's long, I know it's a lot of terminology, but read through it and understand what is covered in your health insurance policy. Just because you have health insurance, that doesn't mean that you have free healthcare. There are still going to be costs associated with it. And so you want to be aware of what those costs are, so that if you do need to, go to a doctor or go to the health center, you've read through that information and you're aware of that, so that you're not unwell trying to kind of read through this policy and understand what it means. So that's something that we really recommend you doing in advance. And also establish balance. So it's going to be a really exciting experience going to the US. It's going to be fun, but you can also expect ups and downs and know that this is totally normal. You will likely experience culture shock, as I'm sure that some of our student panelists are going to be able to attest to. A lot of students think, oh, the US, the UK, they're not that different. We all speak English, but actually it is still quite a very different culture. And even the language sometimes might not be as similar as you think it is. And so know that that's okay. Know that it's okay to get there and be really excited and have everything going well. And that all of a sudden, if it dips, that's normal. And it is okay to kind of go through that period, and that you will likely readjust and kind of start to feel better with some time. So be aware of that and work to kind of establish balance when you are there, so that you've got those happy times, but knowing that if there are times that maybe aren't as exciting as you thought they might be, that's okay too. And lastly, just enjoy the adventure. It's going to be a very exciting time. It's going to be a new experience. There are going to be lots of fun new things to try and to do. And you will be stepping out of your comfort zone and doing things for the first time, and enjoy that. And yeah, I hope that you do. And so just quickly, a few more ways that we can help before I hand over to our student panelists. So as I've already mentioned, we have some pre-departure information on our websites. And so this is our website. And if you go to the tab of going to the USA, we've got this pre-departure tab here, and you can read all the information about pre-departure there. Also, you'll notice this kind of postgraduate tab here. And so if you do have any interest in maybe pursuing postgraduate study down the line, then you can come back to us and use us as a resource for any applications for that. All right. Also, just to make you aware, we do have an advising service. So we take questions by phone or email or even Zoom video call. And so if after the session you find that you do have some questions that you want to ask us, don't hesitate to reach out, and we're happy to answer those for you. All right, so that is all from me. So what I would like to do now is invite our student panelists to come up, and they're each going to take a turn to introduce themselves. And then we will, after they've had a chance to introduce themselves, we will open up the floor to questions, because I'm sure that you are eager to hear from these students and to ask them any questions that you might have. So, Safa, if you'd like to come up.
Yeah, I'm Safa. I'm a rising junior, and I'm at Vanderbilt in. I'm from like a small town in North Yorkshire, like kind of near Leeds. But I study political science and computer science in the US, and I've done 2 years, so 2 more years to go. And on campus, I'm like the president of the Multicultural Leadership Council, so all like student orgs, like about 40 student orgs, like they're under us, an umbrella organization. I'm also involved in like the radio show, as well as, you know, stuff like the Muslim Student Association, South Asian Culture Exchange, stuff like that. So yeah.
Thank you. Connor, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Connor. I go to a small liberal arts school called Transylvania University in Lexington, Kentucky. I am majoring in economics and minoring in computer science. And I also play baseball for the baseball team.
Great, thank you. And Adelina.
Hi everyone, I'm Adelina. I use she, they pronouns. I'm originally from West London and I went to state school in Northwest London. I am currently at Columbia University. I'm a rising junior and I'm studying neuroscience and ethnicity and race studies. On campus, I'm involved in like various things. I have a on-campus job at the Columbia Graduate School of Journalism. I'm involved in multicultural recruitment for the Columbia Admissions Department. And I'm also involved in like performing arts, etc., etc. But yeah, that's me.
Great, thanks so much. So if you have any questions for our panelists, please feel free to pop those into the Q&A box and we will pose those questions to our speakers and get those answered. And just one of the first questions that I've seen kind of pop up is, will all the links in the chat section be available after the Zoom session, which is a very good question. So I will be sending a follow-up email with the recording to the link to the recording of this presentation, and I will include the helpful links in that email as well, so you'll have access to it there. So we've got a question here that is, what were some of the challenges you faced studying in the US? Would anybody like to get started on that one?
I definitely struggled with the difference in like academics versus the UK. So like obviously your A levels, you know, you study for 2 years and your exams are just like dependent on, you know, the end of the 2 years. Whereas in the US, it's kind of like constant testing, like a midterm every 3 weeks, something like that, you know. Even things like in-person, like small, you know, stuff like quizzes, like it might only be 5% of your overall grade, but like let's say you have 10 the semester, like you don't want to just throw away like 5% of your grade basically. So that's one thing I definitely struggled with, as well as just like, I don't know, dealing with the difference in like culture, I guess. You know, like I'm like a student on like full financial aid and dealing with the differences between going to like a school of people that you know, type of people I would never interact with at secondary school was like a big cultural shock for me.
Thanks, Safa.
Just to add on to what Safa said, I definitely think one of the most challenging things for me was the feeling of like imposter syndrome, especially being like a low income. That was definitely something that made a big impact at the start of my like university career, but there are definitely a lot of resources to help support you during that, whether that's like first gen low income like organizations or groups for international students, and there's definitely a lot of resources to take advantage of that can help you feel more at home. Another thing I think is I really struggled with burnout. There's definitely much more culture, like a culture of doing things at university here, like being involved in a lot of clubs and like taking a lot of classes and working. And I definitely found that I put too much on my plate, just because I was trying to like take advantage of all the opportunities that were available. And so I did burn out quite quickly, but I did just learn that it's just about like time management and kind of figuring out what you want to prioritize.
Yeah, I agree with both of them. I think one of the big things is like, especially at most US schools, you have like a general education system where you have to take different classes. So with me, like I was having to like take science classes, which I haven't taken in 3 years, and trying to recall all my knowledge of that, and just trying to balance like having 4 completely different subjects at the same time and being able to keep on top of all of them. That, and then just staying on top of all my time management, because burnout is a real thing, and it's kind of, it is tough, like not being super close to home, but at the same time, it's kind of the fun of it too.
Thank you. So next we have a bit of a practical question. So I can kind of start out with a bit of an answer, and then if anybody wants to share their experience. So the question is, do you suggest getting a US phone SIM? And if so, which one? And so I would say in terms of which one, it's because the US is such a big country, different SIMs are going to be kind of available across, it's going to kind of depend on where you are. So you're going to kind of want to find out from your institution or from other students at your institution, kind of what phone plans are good for where you are, where like, especially if you're somewhere kind of more rural, there might be certain providers that kind of provide better service than other providers. But how did the student speakers, how did did you get a US SIM? And if so, how did you go about figuring out which one to get?
For me, like being in New York, I didn't necessarily need to worry about like which providers I could use. I know that if you're like more rural, that's probably something you need to take more into account. I'm on Mint Mobile, and I honestly chose it because it was the cheapest one I could find. And it like works pretty well. It works well like everywhere I've been to, except when I was camping in the middle of absolutely nowhere in the woods where there was nothing. So that's worked really well for me. But I think, again, as Sarah said, it will depend on like where you're based in the US.
Yeah, our school did most schools I think do like an international students like orientation thing. So they helped us get planned with that. And I'm on AT&T, which is linked to like my dad's work account or something. So it gets a really nice discount.
Great. Safa, you want to go?
No, it's fine. It's just the same situation.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. And so the next question is, where would you recommend looking for jobs on campus? So I guess the first question is, do any of you have a job on campus? And if so, how did you go about looking for it? Because I think, again, this will vary depending on where you are, but you can share your experience.
I think I just got a job confirmed actually like 5 minutes ago. And like I'm working in the on-campus shop, and that's like $12 an hour. So it's a pretty good, deal for just like scanning items. So I think a good place to look for jobs is early on. Like I just applied a few days ago and I had an interview yesterday. So like my semester starts like end of August. So I would definitely say look early, because good jobs that are like, like this, just like scanning items and getting basically £9 an hour will go quite quickly. So I'd say look early, and then also you have to just be aware that you'll have to do like the social security process, which doesn't, it doesn't take a while, but it takes some amount of time. You have to get certain documents signed and then go to the office and they email you your social security number. So I'd say look early on now, like on the student employment website, and then just be aware that you won't be able, I don't think you can get your social security number until you're in the US. So you can look now, but I don't think you can officially start work until you're there.
Yeah, I also have an on-campus job. I work at the Columbia Graduate School of Journalism in their admissions and financial aid department. I have been working there since the very beginning of my freshman year. So what I would recommend about finding a job is start looking really, really early, like Safa said, and also don't be afraid to like just email people. That's what I did. I just like emailed my now boss my resume, and I was like, hey, I have no idea if you're looking for like a student employee, but if you are, I'd really love to work here. And then I had an interview and like I had the job within a couple of days. So just like yeah, just start looking early and like kind of throw yourself into it, and you should, like most schools will have a lot of opportunities for student employment, so it shouldn't be something that's too difficult to find. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't really have many on-campus jobs like that you can like really apply for, but just because we're located in downtown Lexington, it's super easy to just walk 5 minutes and just give you a resume to someone or like 20 different companies to see if you can get a job. For me though, because playing like a collegiate sport, I don't really have time for like a full-time job, so I just DoorDash on the side, and that's how I get my income.
Thank you. So our next question is, I feel like I can tie these next couple of ones in together. So we've got somebody who's asking, what has been your favorite experience where you've been studying? And also, what is the most useful bit of advice you could give to someone moving to the US? So it's kind of like a two-part question there.
Can you say the first part again?
The first part is, what has been your favorite experience where you've been studying?
Favorite experience. One of my favorite experiences was like in a showcase I took part in, which is like the South Asian showcase, and that was just really nice because obviously before COVID, so we could do stuff. But it was like a whole showcase, and I got to know a lot of people. And like I was doing a class in South Asian politics at the time, so like my whole class came. And I would say stuff like that is really fun. I think you will have hopefully a normal college experience now that like vaccine requirements are kind of a thing. So I'd say just like get involved in things. Like I never thought I'd be, do a dance showcase, but like I think that's a nice throw yourself in because there's so many resources at college, so just utilize all of them.
My favorite experience was we won our conference championship this year with the baseball team and had our best season in school history, which was very fun considering how crazy of a year it was with COVID and how messed up all our practices were and stuff.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know. It's difficult to like pinpoint like a favorite or most exciting thing that's happened, but similar to Safa, I think like the opportunities to get involved in things and like perform and like just really feel like a sense of community with the people that that are involved in the same clubs as you. I think that's like probably been the highlight of my time so far.
And then the other part of that question is, what is the most useful bit of advice you could give to someone moving to the US?
I would say, because a lot of you guys are for like 1 year, just make the most out of it. But also, I don't know how much of your GPA or class, like how well you do, will affect your like UK degrees or whatever. But I would say like it's very easy to just like not attend class or like if it doesn't really count, but I'd say definitely get involved because like one of my favorite classes I've done is actually like with 4 people, and it was like a German class, so you really got to like delve deep, and it was basically just like the teacher and like 4 students. So I think that's one nice thing about the US, like small class sizes, really utilize that because I'm not sure if that's a huge thing in the UK, that's, I think, one thing you definitely find in the US, like smaller classes, specific learning, you know, like African American and diaspora studies is going to be a thing at pretty much every US university. And, you know, we don't have that degree or classes in the UK. So take those classes and like get involved with the things you're interested in.
I would say just kind of buy into all of it. Just go try things you've never tried, like go experience what like a day in the life of an American is like, and go to like a football game and stuff like that. Just do stuff you can never really do back home, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree. I think it can be like quite daunting to like want to throw yourself into everything, but that's how you're going to get the most out of your experience. And like Safa said, there are so many like random, unique little opportunities you can have, whether that's in extracurriculars or in academics. And those are opportunities you might not have in the UK. If you're doing a UK degree, like this is your time and your chance to be able to take a random class about, I don't know, dinosaurs or something. And if you want to, like you can do that here. So just like buy into it, like Connor said.
Thank you all. That's all really good advice, I think. So hopefully you got some good tips from that. So another practical question, are there any tips for setting up a US bank account when studying in the US?
Take your passport and visa, because they definitely got to check that. I would also say I'm with Bank of America, which I really like because the app is quite good and like gives you a lowdown of your spending and your budgeting and stuff. And also there's this site, how do I send this to everyone, called Wise. And it basically, so like if you want to send money before you get a job or whatever, like if you want to send money from your UK account into dollars, then this is like the best one I've found, like minimal fees. Like other sites charge so much, and Bank of America charges a lot. Like don't do it through the app, do it like through that website, because it's like really minimal fees. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm with Bank of America too. I think that's definitely the best one to go with, and it's super easy. You just walk in and just give your passport and your visa, and they'll set it up for you pretty easily.
I'm with Santander just because that's like the provider that we have on campus for me. But yeah, I mean, as they said, it's quite easy to set up. Just remember your passport and your visa, and it should be easy enough.
Thank you. So the next question is, some new student orientation events are held online, but these are very expensive. Are they truly worth it? So I guess I'd have a question about that question. I would be surprised to hear that a US university is charging for a new student orientation. And so I'm wondering if that is through the institution that you're attending, or if it's maybe like a private company that's doing some type of student orientation events. I would imagine that the university itself should offer kind of free orientation to students who are attending the university. And so I would recommend taking part in anything free that's offered through the university. I wouldn't necessarily know much about any kind of private events that are kind of fee paying.
I'm not sure if the person was referring to like pre-orientation programs. I know that that's something we have at Columbia, which does like cost money that you have to like spend your own money on. And those are like group, like hiking or like rowing or volunteering. And I personally didn't do one, and I don't think that affected my like ability to ease into the Columbia community or anything like that. But everyone I know who did one of those programs like does still have really close friends from it. But if it's something that you're not sure of because of the money, I mean, I didn't do it for the same reason, and it didn't affect me like not doing those pre-orientation programs.
Cool, thanks Adelina, that's really useful. Here's a really good question. what was the biggest culture shock you had going to university in the US?
Could you say the question again?
Yeah,
Sorry,
I was just about to. Yeah. So what was the biggest culture shock you had going to university in the US?
Culture shock, definitely. Like, I mean, obviously on campus, it's, you know, it's just a completely different student life to what you're used to in the UK. Like, but also other things like, I don't know, like in the UK, I think there's some things that kind of unify everyone, no matter like where you're from. I think in the US, you'll realize there's so many regional differences between where people are from, which obviously is a thing in the UK as well. But you know, like it's hard to describe the cultural differences. I feel like experiencing it is like kind of people have a lot more like they want to talk to you a lot more. I think the people in the UK just kind of mind their own business sometimes, whereas in the US, like every single time, if you've got a British accent, like people will remind you of that every single day, like 10 times a day. So you definitely won't forget that you're not from there.
Yeah, this is always like, whenever you meet an American, like this is always like one of the first questions people ask you, and it's always like the hardest question to answer, just because like it's one of those things, like it's pretty tough to describe. Like it's just different being surrounded by Americans every day, like than just being surrounded by like British people every day. Like the humor is kind of different, but I mean, it's a lot of fun, and you do grow as a person by like having that experience.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's difficult to put into words, but yeah, I think that it's like quite small things. I don't think there's any like one very large thing that like shocked me, but it's like small things like the humor is very different, and like even like just the way people interact with each other is very different, and people in the lift like to talk to me a lot, which I was very confused by, and I still kind of am. And then kind of what I spoke about earlier, just the kind of culture of like US universities of like being involved in a lot of things. I think I really struggled with like trying to find the right balance, especially because like in the UK, like not many people I knew like did extracurriculars, so that wasn't something like that like I did, but it wasn't something that everyone around me did. But now it was, so I felt that there was kind of an expectation. But yeah, again, it's just about finding that balance.
Thank you all for that. Another question about housing and sharing a room. So have any of you shared a dorm, and how did you find this experience?
There's a huge difference, actually. It's different. It's quite interesting. I would say, so my school, they make us do roommate agreements. So like as like different things, and you agree on like what time, like a kind of time you're gonna sleep, policy on guests of, you know, all genders, and you know, all those things. You know, like if different, but like me and my roommate, we got on quite well. We would always let each other know, like just one example randomly, like we had a fridge, like a shared mini fridge, and like she was like, oh, I'm just gonna take like one of your orange juices, but I'll buy one like when I'm gonna go to the shop in like an hour. So by the time I was back in the evening, I didn't even notice, but like she said it, you know, just I knew like she was gonna replace it anyways. But even small things like that, make sure you communicate with your roommate, because the biggest issues come when you don't tell each other things like, oh, by the way, sorry, like I broke your plant pot. Like just tell them, like don't let them come back and there's just like stuff on the floor and you know you didn't clean it up. Like just tell them, you know, most of the times they're not actually going to be annoyed with you. It's just if you don't tell them something, then that's, I feel like, when issues start.
My biggest piece of advice about housing is most schools, I think, will have like a survey you fill out before you get there. And it's like what type of habits you have, like cleanliness habits, sleeping habits, if you're a smoker, whatever, so that they can like pair you well for housing. Do not lie, because my roommate lied and we really did not get on because she was the opposite of what she said she was in the form. So don't lie, like it's just going to be a better situation if you're honest and you get put in a housing situation where you are like equal-ish in terms of like your habits. But for the most part, I actually enjoyed like the more social and communal living. Like I was in a suite with 10 people and I really enjoyed like having that because it was almost like having guaranteed friends. Like you could just kind of like, it made it easier to like ease into being in a new country and trying to get used to navigating school. And yeah, I mean, even at Columbia, you can definitely have a single, but like I'm choosing to room with one of my best friends next year just because it's like a really great experience and it's really fun.
Yeah, so we have to live on campus until either we turn 21 or our senior year, so we have to live in dorms for like a while. And I got really lucky my first year. Like my coach assigned me another incoming freshman on the team, and he ended up being my best friend, so it worked out great for me. So it could go either way, but most of the time, like it's also pretty easy to get out of like a room too if you're having troubles with your roommates, because I've known a few.
Thank you. Another question is, how have you found networking with academics or building professional contacts? Do you have any tips for this? So is this something that any of you have done? And if so, how have you gone about doing it? And do you have any tips?
Is this like professors or like professionals or both?
I think both, but yeah. It's how have you found networking with academics or building professional contacts? Yeah.
Okay, academics. So last summer I worked as a research assistant and this year I'm also doing that. So I would say academics wise, like just talk to your professor, be scared. Like they will honestly get really glad if people go to office hours and like make extra effort and email, because they often say like, oh, you're like the first person to come all week or something like that. They want to talk to you. Again, the accent is a big, like people will remember you in classes, ask questions, stuff like that. And networking otherwise, we have like a career center, and I'm sure like all your universities will have this, but like sometimes there's specific internships and jobs that are like just for students, like alumni like have these jobs and stuff. So definitely utilize the career center. Like I had a meeting I think a month ago where I just had a Zoom call with one of the career center people, and we literally just like edited my resume for like an hour and a half. And that's like their job, they get paid to do that, so don't be afraid to use those resources.
Yeah, I want to echo what Safa said, and I think that like academic can go hand in hand. I know that like I became really close to some of my professors by going to office hours and like really making an effort, and now like I'm friends with some of them, and one of my professors from last semester is like now my like mentor like through my academic journey. Before COVID, I was also close with another one of my professors from freshman year, and she got me a job working at the US-Mexico border for a nonprofit that was providing legal support to people in detention. That didn't happen because of COVID, but like that was a job I was able to get through a professor. Another thing, I said this before about on-campus jobs, but just email people. The internship I'm doing now, I literally just got because I emailed them and I was like, hey, here's my resume. I don't know if you need anyone. And they were like, actually, we don't, but thank you so much. And then a week later, they were like, we lied. We need someone. Can you start work next week? And I'm like, yeah. So yeah, just put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to email people and just like put in effort with your professors and try and like, because they are really willing to, and they kind of want to be your friend, to be really honest with you. So yeah.
Yeah, most professors will do a good job of like laying hours and stuff, and like if you swing by and talk to them, or even talk to them after class, if they hang around, then like it builds that good relationship with them. And if they don't have, like if you're looking for an internship and they don't have like an available spot for it or something, they normally have a ton of ex-students who they're still close with, who they can set you up with too.
Great, thank you all for that. So just a note that we are coming up on the time where we thought we would end the webinar session, but we do have still a lot of questions left from students. So we might extend this webinar portion a little bit longer, just so that we can get some of these questions answered, if that's okay. Because this next question is another really good one that I think is important. How did you handle initial homesick moments? If
Definitely,
you had
like, yeah, definitely. Like international student groups. And like if, you know, your your culture is represented in a student group, that really helps. Like, you know, like going to like South Asian restaurants, my friends like really helped. And like there's like a European politics club at my uni, so like I literally did like because I study politics as well, but like I did a presentation on Brexit, and that was really fun because a ton of the other European students are involved with that. And you know, like just being around people who kind of understand you know, where you're from and you can relate to a lot more definitely helps. And also like, I know, bring like dairy milk with you or something like that, because American chocolate is just not great. And like just like that helps, you know, like you go down and like you can go get food and see your friends. I think that definitely helps.
Yeah, I really agree with Safa on that. I think the most important thing and the most helpful thing to me was like utilizing those identity groups, whether that's like, I'm a part of quite a lot of them, to be honest, like first gen low income, international student groups, Latinx student groups, and like queer student groups, and those having those like that network and that like support system really helped me in those moments of homesickness, because especially for international and like first gen low income students, everyone was in a very similar position to me, and go home at Thanksgiving or stuff like that. So it was really nice to kind of have that support system in place for those like holidays and just in general.
Yeah, one of the good things about like going to school in the US is that you normally meet people from like far away, even in the US. Like, so out in California, you'll meet people from like the East Coast and stuff like that. So like a lot of the time, like other people like experiencing what you're going through too. And most of the time, like you'll have a pretty strong support system around you. Like if you ever need to talk about like being homesick. I know for me personally, my international admissions counselor, whenever she would go back to England to talk to the students, would always like ask me if I needed anything to remind me of home or stuff like that. So she was really good about that.
Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll do one more question from here, and then we will end this part of the session and move into the optional session where students can come up on screen and continue kind of asking more questions and introducing themselves. And so I think that the question that there was a question here about eating food in the dorms. So what's it like to have food in the dorms? It's quite different from having like a kitchen at a UK university. What was that experience like for all of you?
It's quite nice because you don't have to cook. The food isn't amazing 24/7, but you know, there's hot sauce bottles, there's, you know, you can make it a bit better. I would say one really nice thing is like for me on my campus, like I think the chicken and beef is halal. There's also a ton of like kosher options and vegan. And if you have allergies, they literally make you a special meal every day. Like one of my friends had quite a few allergies, and every meal time she would just go and they'd give her a box. And like I think they quite like are accommodating. But it definitely is a weird experience. Very American. Like you will feel quite like typical American, but again, just enjoy it. Like it's a great way to meet people and talk to people. Definitely do that in like your first few weeks.
Yeah, I think it is really strange. I know, like, I went from going to like cooking for myself every day to like going to the US and like having a dining hall available to me like 24/7. It was very, very strange, and like I did not quite know how to restrict myself. But yeah, I think that yeah, what Safa said was like really great. They have loads of different options. It is really nice, especially with the stress of school and like all the other things you're going to be doing, to just have the option to just kind of grab and go. It's also a really, really social place, like the dining halls, which make it like, it's really nice, especially in the first couple of weeks, to like grab lunch with someone or grab dinner with someone and then like have other people they know join, and it's like a really good way to kind of make friends and get better acquainted with everything.
Yeah, I think adding on to that, like we as a team, we would have like team breakfasts or team dinners or something. So there'd be like 40, 50 of us like just in the dining hall, just hanging out for like an hour before classes or after classes. But most of the time it's pretty good. Like even at a small school where there's only like 1,000 students, like you have pretty good food. And then me and my friends dining hall, and it's insane. So I'm sure most big schools have probably really nice dining halls.
Great. Thank you all for sharing those experiences. And thank you to our student panelists for being here for this webinar session. They are also going to be joining us in this optional session that we will have now. And so this is going to conclude the webinar part of the session. What I'm going to do is put in the chat a link to the optional session. So anybody who would like to kind of join in on there, and it's going to be more of like a Zoom meeting type format. So you'll have the opportunity to unmute yourself and turn your video on, and you'll have the chance to kind of introduce yourself and ask any questions live to our student panelists there. So what I'll do is I'll post the link in the chat here, and then we will get started probably in about 5 minutes, so at about 6:40, and we'll do 20 minutes in that session, just so that we can have a chance to kind of switch over to that. So if you want to join, you can click on the link, and then you can go and just like run to the bathroom or get some water and just have a quick break. And that way the student speakers and myself can kind of get all set up over there. So for those of you who won't be joining us for that session, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and we hope that you found some useful information. And for those of you who are planning to join us, we will see you in that meeting, and I'm going to put the link in the chat now. So feel free to go ahead and click on that link if you're planning to join. Otherwise, we hope that you have a lovely evening.